The GameSir T3 Lite is one of these controllers that took the scene by storm. When I saw it a couple of months back now, I thought it looks interesting, but I had other controllers I wanted to check out first. Well, the time has now come to give it a whirl after all. Is this retro-inspired controller worth the hype? Well, let's find out. The very first thing I noticed is how wide the controller feels, despite being the same size as a PS4 controller, which it is clearly modeled after. What I noticed next is that the buttons feel quite stiff out of the box. They could become softer with use, but for now I think they are a bit exhausting. Staying on the buttons, I also have to talk about the position of them. Most of them are quite normal, but once you get to the center of the area, it gets kinda strange. From instinct I would say that these two buttons here in the middle are start and select, right? Well no, these are home and capture, while the other two up here are actually start and select. Also, this is the home button, not this center one here. Well yeah, because this is the turbo button. I get why they have done it this way, as it is more comfortable, but still the visual language going on here is just bad. One last thing I noticed on my first impression is when I plugged it in, it should have set itself automatically to the correct mode, but for me this did not happen, which as an example caused the triggers to act as start and select. A quick switch over to X input and this was no longer a problem though. Next up, let's quickly go over what's in the box. You get the T3 Lite itself and a QR code linking to the manual. Except the manual they link to is not completely translated to English. But after a quick search, I found a full one on their website, which makes me wonder why they don't link that one. The specs themselves are just as slim. You get Hall effect sticks, 2 macro buttons, a turbo button, a polling rate of 1000 Hz, it weighs 190 grams, 230 with the wire included, and officially supports PC, Switch and phones. Advertisement is one thing, but how does the hardware actually stack up? As for the actuation force, you get 115 grams for A and B, and 120 for X and Y. Then the D-pad comes in at 155 for up, 160 for down and right, and 165 for left. Start and select come in at 185 and 180 grams respectively. Then finally comes L3 with 675 grams and R3 with 680 grams. All in all, this is comparable to other controllers, but I think that the rubber domes used for ABXY feel a bit stiff since they give in suddenly opposed to others that kinda slowly give in. It's hard to explain, but some of you will know what I mean. Next come the sticks themselves. With hardware tester I got a circularity error rate of 1.4% for each. And with joystick tester I even got a low 0.2% for both. Pretty much classic Hall effect numbers right here. And finally is the polling rate. I first used the polling rate tester, which got me once again 2k Hz on a 1k Hz advertised controller, with an average of 1680 Hz. I did however notice this time that the joystick tester also does some sort of polling rate test, and there I got 941 Hz for the left and 954 Hz for the right stick. With that I'm now confident that the polling rate that is advertised is the correct one. With that cleared, let's get to the sound test. Overall, this controller sounds as standard as it gets. It's not too loud, doesn't have any huge echoes, and can even be more on the silent side when it gets to the D-pad. One surprise though were the macro buttons on the back. They are some of the best ones I've tested so far. They have a solid sound with no apparent echo. Other manufacturers could take this as an example for making their own controllers. From my use over the past 1 to 2 weeks, I can say that I overall did like the controller. This time around I played a lot of Dark Souls and Hollow Knight Silksong for testing, which made me use the D-pad quite a bit more than usual. For the most part I can say that the T3 Lite is really non-offensive and felt most similar to his PS4 controller. I did think though that especially the sticks have a harder feeling rubber. Also, something that happened from time to time is I pressed the turbo button by instinct, thinking it's the home button, accidentally setting one of the buttons to turbo. Speaking of, the turbo has only one setting, hold. Other controllers also have the reverse, hold to stop, which is the one I use more often in the rare instances that I use turbo. Moving over to the D-pad, I first did the classic contra test, which showed something that I suspected while playing Silksong. Misinputs are pretty common when going side to side. This became a little annoying in some of the bosses or platform heavy sections, as I was trying to do a downward strike but ended up moving to one side while attacking normally. Getting away from that, we have the macro buttons, which can perform up to 12 steps. Now this is where I was actually a bit more surprised with this controller. The macros stayed extremely well synced with the original inputs, which makes this one of the best controllers in that regard I've tried so far. So unlike with others, I can actually see the macros being useful for timing sensitive stuff. As for the compatibility, I checked it on PC, Switch, Android, PS4 and PS3. Why not platform XYZ? Well, because I either don't have it or I don't think it's relevant. So for PC, it works flawlessly and is probably the best place to use it on, thanks to it being wired only. Which brings me to phones. It worked perfectly on my phone with a USB-C dongle that I had laying around, but I really have to wonder if there's anyone who wants to play with a wired controller on a phone. Maybe someone who then hooks it up via HDMI to a TV as a sort of console experience, but I think that is very rare. I then come to the Switch, and have to say that I tried and tried and tried, but simply could not get it working. The Switch itself would show a pop-up saying paired, but I could not for the life of me get a single input to register. I did find some threads where people had the same problem, but nothing helped. This then brings me to two consoles that weren't advertised, the PS3 and 4. First off is the PS4, which, try as I might, I couldn't get a single input to register as well. After that I tested the PS3 with a similar expectations, but there I found that the T3 almost works. Almost, because everything except the home button works. This is not a big problem, but it still means that you need a second controller once in a while, and at that point why not use the second controller? Also, I might have noticed a small amount of input delay there, but that could also be a problem on my end. And all of this brings me to the conclusion. At the same time, I do and I don't understand the hype for the T3 Lite. For the price, it is a solid controller with a premium feel. I can't however truly recommend it like others do. Do you intend to play solely on PC? Then this is a good controller worth every cent. Just be aware that the auto detection might mess up and you need to set it to X input manually. Do you plan to use it on Switch or any other platform? From it straight up not working to it being wired only, in that case I cannot recommend it at all. A controller I would rather recommend is the Thunder Robot G45, which I recently reviewed on this channel. With all of that being said, I might have had a bad unit, but this neither inspired confidence in GameSir itself, nor in other people that hyped it up.